This week's episode is brought to you by Sukkot Giving, TC Jewfolk's fall event on Sunday, November 3rd from 5 to 7 p.m. at Bethel Synagogue. This event is a beautiful and delicious celebration of the American Jewish experience, and nothing says American Jewish experience more to us than the all too familiar juggling we do in the moments between the high holidays and Thanksgiving. The beauty and crossover of fall, the harvest, and the focus on gratitude isn't lost on us. This is going to be a beautiful evening with a gorgeous catered, kosher, vegetarian, and dairy fall meal, live music with The Long Honeymoon, a grounding moment with Rabbi Jill Averin from You're Jewish, small gifts for any children present from PJ Library, and a meaningful moment and gift for all in attendance with local artist Robin Awend. It is going to be a delight. Tickets are on sale now, so to learn more and get your tickets, go to bit.ly/SukkotGiving. That's bit.ly/SukkotGiving to get your tickets today. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to an evening with Peter Himmelman. I am Lonny Goldsmith. I'm the editor of TC Jewfolk, and I'm thrilled to welcome all of you here tonight to ModernWell. So thank you, first of all of you who are here. Please give yourselves a round of applause. If you are not here, if you're watching our live stream on YouTube, welcome to those of you at home. If you're catching up on the special Who the Folk podcast when that airs, thanks for listening. We appreciate it. I am thrilled here to talk with Peter about his new book, in which Peter wrote, "There's no plot, no through line, and no surprise ending, so don't be dismayed if you don't find one. What I do hope you'll find, whether you consider yourself a spiritual person, a religious person, or an avowed atheist, is a stronger connection to the part of you that is always curious, always hopeful, and always filled with music and light." Minneapolis' own Peter Himmelman is an artist who doesn't just stay in his lane with music, despite being a Grammy and Emmy-nominated musician. With his second book, the recently released Suspended by No String, a songwriter's reflection on faith, aliveness, and wonder, Himmelman fuses his musicianship, storytelling, and literal art, since he drew the images that go with the essays in the book, with his authentic Jewish self. Internationally acclaimed jazz musician and author Ben Sidran said of Peter, "Music is a form of prayer, a language that speaks of the heart's deepest desire, and Peter Himmelman is that rare neshama who can translate the ineffable into the practical." And best-selling author Steve Leder says, "Suspended by No String is a soulful, beautiful, melancholy, joyful, and redemptive journey with a creative genius of the heart. This is a prayer book, a hymnal, a sacred text that you will revisit again and again." Peter Himmelman, welcome home to Minneapolis.
Thank you very much.
So I guess for starters, this is going to seem like a fairly straightforward question, and I'm sure it's a lot more complicated than that. Why this book and why now?
That's always a good question. I mean, is this thing on, by the way? Can you hear me?
Here.
It's good to just hold these.
Take that one.
Oh, this is.
There we go.
It's better for the voice. So much easier. You're asking me reasons why I do these things. The real reason is I just enjoy it a lot. I really like taking the disparate parts of things that I see in the world and that are now seemingly so chaotic. And when you create something, whether it's a painting or poetry or even a really deep conversation with a friend, you are in some sense ordering that chaos. And that feels really good. And in a sense, the book was self-serving, as all my work really is in a sense. When I write songs, they're not for a specific purpose. And whenever I try that, there's something that feels very mediocre about those offerings. This one is something I deeply felt, and when it was finished, that was now.
Yeah.
That's why now.
Is writing the book, or a book, I guess this book in particular, is it the same as writing songs and music? Is it the same muscle, or is it a different one? And what keeps driving you to writing?
Yeah, I mean, it is very similar. Obviously, the manifestation of those creative works is quite different. One is, legible, and one is audible. The thing that's very similar about it is that you need to have two states of mind happening at one time. One is this kind of rigid architecture that underpins everything. It would seem that, well, that's not really a creative thing to have these strictures put on you. But at the same time, on that foundation, that, let's say, terra firma, you also need to cull things as if from a dream. So they seem like they're two opposites, but they harmonize so well. One without the other will never yield anything.
Okay. So, something you wrote in the introduction, and I promise, I read a lot more than the introduction. There's going to be more questions about deeper in the book, all right? But something
Just
you wrote,
to know.
Just so you know. But something you wrote in the introduction really jumped out to me right at the beginning. You wrote, like most things in my life, my definition of faith is a work in progress, so it tends not to be overly rigid. And yet, it remains a powerful, maybe the most powerful, factor in the way I move through the world. And I think questioning faith is pretty normal, and in Judaism, it feels very required at a lot of times. But at what point in your journey as a musician, as an artist, as a Jew, did faith become such a central idea to you?
Well, I have sort of a contrarian mindset, so I'm always like debating something that you're saying. I hate to do that. I'm not really
that's
doing
great.
that, but things occur to me. First of all, the idea of faith is something we say. You hear it in songs all the time. God, have faith, faith, faith. You hear it, and it becomes, I used to say when I was a kid, I was a strange kid, and I'm still a strange man. I would sit in bed, and I would say the word rope, 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 until it meant nothing to me. It faded out. It was a good feeling. The word faith has that potential, and it certainly seems as though when you say, do you have faith? Faith in your own abilities, faith in your loved ones, your friends, all those components are real. But what I was driving at in the book is that I aspire to a faith which sort of defies pure intellectualism and yet includes it. That the world, with all its myriad beauty and sorrow and complexity, cannot have been the result of some random circumstances. This is the conclusion that I've come to. It doesn't preclude my belief in science. It doesn't make me a strange person in that sense. But faith is an aspiration. It's not something that one holds in their hand. It's mercurial. I work on having this ability to see in any situation, and I'm not always successful, I'm probably rarely successful, seeing that God's hand, if you will, not anthropomorphic hand, so don't get crazy on me here. There's a certain order that's being put out into the world in a constant way by the Creator, in capital C, Creator. As a creative person, I kind of understand a homeopathic, minuscule, infinitely small degree of what that could be like.
Okay. So before we hear you read your first story, Adjustments, I wanted to ask about something that the quotes that I read earlier from Ben Sidran and Steve Leder sort of alluded to, which is that your songs have kind of a prayer or hymnal type quality to them. You write in the book, as I look back at the bulk of them, your songs, it occurs to me that I might have unwittingly conjured them up as prayers of love, prayers of remembrance, prayers to ward off loneliness, prayers to awaken hope, and prayers to ease the pain of knowing that some answers will never be found. And in this story, you write, faith is difficult. It isn't about belief, it's about adjusting to being human. And obviously, we've just talked about faith, and faith is part of literally in the title of the book. But when in your music and faith journeys did you know that there was that kind of synergy in your songs?
Well, look, there's a song that I wrote, if I can even describe it. Somebody sent it to me a few weeks ago. And we had a band in Minneapolis, and the band was somewhat popular. And I had a song, and I hesitate to say the lyrics out loud, but why not? This is me telling my truth. The song, and some of the band members are here today, was called The Sperm Song. I will now recite from memory the first verse, and I will explain how that was my first foray into writing spiritual songs. I am the champion of my mother's egg. I could have wound up on my father's leg. Like so much off-white polka dots on my sheets as practice shots. But the chorus of the song, was, you saved me. You went ahead and saved me out of all those billions of sperm cells. What does it mean to have been born? What does it mean to be given the gift of speech and mobility and intellect? Those were the things that were running through my mind. The only difference was I was embarrassed to say those things, or I had no language to express them. Those were things that I was thinking about from the youngest age.
Well, if you want to grab your book, Adjustments, page 40, if you all want to follow along.
Yeah, that's good. You got, all right, follow along. That's good. That's good. We have
if you open up to page 40 in your hymnals, we'll,
If I make a mistake here, somebody correct me. Adjustments. A woman I love once asked me how I could have faith in God when we live in a world as frightening and uncertain as ours, a world where evil shows its face every day. It's both a good question and an impossible one to answer. Because she was in great pain, my best response was to hold her, to hear her, to be with her without words, without explanations. I think that back on that encounter from time to time, and with no one looking to me for answers, I too will raise questions about my own faith in a world that is indeed full of fear and uncertainty. Those questions are also unanswerable. Even now, God is in some sense responsible for my fingers tapping out these sentences on the keyboard of my computer, for each of the raindrops falling on the rooftops outside my window, and for every feather of every pigeon seeking shelter under the eaves. Even the so-called normal things are impossible to answer for. The question of faith in God comes down to more practical matters. How do I cope with the not knowing that surrounds me at every moment? How do I reconcile myself to the fact that I will never understand many of the things I take as a given, air, for example, or light, or water, or the ability to communicate my thoughts, or to give life to a child who can give birth to a child of her own? Where do I file my uncertainty about everything I experience? How can I accustom myself to the nearly supernatural phenomena of my own consciousness? Or do I just ignore the fact that my existence and the existence of the entire universe is a miracle? Faith is difficult. It isn't about belief. It's about adjusting to being human.
Yeah, please. So this book is this is your second book, as I'd mentioned. It's a very different type of book than your first one, right?
Mm.
Why go in the direction you did as a book of essays, essentially, as opposed to something, more narrative? Or obviously, there's lots of different ways to write a book, right? Why this way?
Well, this book, like any sort of artistic project or offering, went through a number of different metamorphoses. I had written a book called Let Me Out. It was about how somebody takes some nascent idea and makes it manifest in the world. There's certain qualities that people have or certain things that they do to have that happen. And the book was successful, and I used it in a sense to, almost as a calling card for this business that I have, which works with different organizations to kind of free their creativity. So my first impulse was to write a sequel to that book. I thought it would be easy. It turned out to be unbearably difficult. For 2 years, I labored over the book, and it was pretty good. Pretty good is one of the worst things you can ever do, I'm telling you. It just was not right. And by providence, I found the help of this wonderful editor. Her name is Barbara Clark. And she read the manuscript, which was finished, and she sent me back this 15-page single-space treatise, really, and what she thought. She had read the other book, and she said, midway through the book, "You've already written a book about creativity. This book seems to me as though you want to write about spirituality." And it was such a liberating thing. So I went ahead for another 2 years and wrote a book about spirituality, making the grievous mistake of doing it in the form of what they call personal self-help narrative sort of thing. Self-help book, which is the demeaning way to look at it, and people cringe. I do too. And the book was also finished. And it still felt pretty good. And it was going to go out to publishers, and I was pretty confident in it. It's like the ice cream was just pretty melted on the cone. It was okay, it's somewhat enjoyable. And I'd been writing some other pieces, and I thought, I'm gonna send something to Barbara and get her feedback. I sent her the piece, which was called, it's in the book, and obviously it's the title, Suspended by No String. I asked her, Barbara, do you think we can shoehorn this somehow into the manuscript? She usually gets back to me right away. This took an inordinately long time, like a week. And she wrote back, Peter, I'm hesitant to tell you this. First of all, I think what you've written is one of the more beautiful things I've read in many years. And if you have more like this, I suggest that you trash what you've been working on and start again. Now, again, rather than that being dismaying, it was another level of liberation. For me to have written the Suspended by No String, it wasn't about increasing my workload or money or anything. I just wrote it one night because I damn well felt like it. Mary, you know what I'm saying. And that's exactly how I go about writing my songs, at least for the last 30 years. And that impetus, which I so desired to write in this way, I wouldn't say it was effortless, because it's never effortless, but it was easeful. I rushed to do the work, as opposed to like, no more of this. It called me to do it.
So we're not going to end on Suspended by No String. So we're not going to get to that yet.
You got a segue.
We're going to, I know you have a perfect setup, and I'm going to ruin it.
No.
So I apologize.
I don't like setups. I go with the flow.
But, so the next story we're going to hear you read is Rational, which is one of the many stories in the book that talks about family who are unfortunately no longer with us. Getting that personal and that deep is a choice. Like, you're making that choice. Why do you make that choice? Because that can, I would think, would be really hard for a lot of people to get that, deep about relatives who've passed away in such a public fashion.
I don't know why it is that I have long had absolutely no issue talking about that aspect of my personal life. I found that from doing that, and even the people that have written to me from now across the world, while those experiences weren't the ones that they shared, the emotions were the same. I've been thinking about this. It's a strange idea. There's only like 10 spices in the world. There's only 7 colors. And I'm sure there are less than a dozen emotions, probably 7. So when you articulate something that feels truthful, you adhere to the Talmudic adage, which is a beautiful one. It's always been inspiring to me. What comes from the heart enters the heart. And you will know that you will touch people when stripped of artifice. And the issues were very personal. This particular piece is less so. It's a little more abstract, but in general, some people that live here know that my sister was killed in a car crash on a road in Wisconsin many, many years ago. And what page is that?
That is on page 95.
Thank you. I'm so glad you're keeping me in order. Otherwise,
well, I'm glad that I have the text message from you saying which stories you wanted to read, and you gave me the page numbers. So
yeah. So, but I don't have the page numbers. That's right. So 95.
95.
Right? So this just touches on my sister. There's a lot about her and these experiences. This is about something that is constantly coming to my mind, and it's sort of a through line in certain ways in the book. We think we know things, we understand things. What's water? Well, they tell us, we've learned that it's H2O. So many people just go on their way. Well, yeah, I know what water is. Well, it's H2O. What is hydrogen? Now, if you're a scientist, you'll explain exactly what the makeup of hydrogen is, or oxygen. And you'll give names and terms to those things, but you don't really know what they are. Nobody really does. And the more I sort of dissemble my rote understandings of things, the closer I am to my ability to give and to love. I become more of what I think I was put on earth to do. The strictures are helpful in some ways. I'd like to stop at red lights. I don't want to be on an airplane that has no fuel. But there's more to life, and this little piece articulates that perhaps better than I have just now. It's called rational. There is nothing rational about insisting that the universe functions on rationality. For example, I've just woken up after having dreamed that Susie, whose death occurred 25 years ago, had been asleep in a hidden cellar that was 3 levels below the basement of our childhood home. There was little rationality about my waking from the dream with my heart pounding and my sense of loss acutely recollected, not to mention the irrationality of the 6 various colored pigeons that have suddenly alighted on the ledge of my window. Rationality is the brush of gray paint we apply to a world whose colors are so vivid, whose dimensions are so vast, and whose essence is so far beyond our ken that without that palette overlay, we would surely lose our minds.
So I learned a lot of things about you in reading this. One of the funny on its face, and then you read deeper and it's very serious and hits a lot deeper. was that around 38 years ago, you went to a psychic. And the psychic, it was in Brooklyn Center?
Something like that.
Center or Park, one of the Brooklyns. Told you what you need to do is uncover a deeper, more honest expression in your music, something closer to the bone. We know that you love the blues and reggae. We think it will be helpful to start playing music you love rather than music you think will sell. That was pretty early in the Sussman-Lawrence journey. It was what led you to your debut solo album. How did this kind of chance encounter alter your path that brought you here?
Well, I haven't heard these questions in advance. I told them I like them.
I offered, he didn't want them.
No, I like them sprung on me, as like that kind of person. Look, it wasn't like I'm not a person who goes to psychics. It didn't like make me want to sign up for that thing, but they were so unusual and so odd. I mean, it tells the story in the book. It was almost like, all right, I'm listening. And when they said that, it wasn't so much that they, whatever it is that they use, like God knows how they do those kind of things. Although when I parted from them, they said, you're more psychic than the two of us are. I'm like, whatever. I need a tuna sandwich now. I'm hungry. But that was just, we all have those experiences. We see something and we're forever changed. We hear something and we're forever changed. It's not all that unusual. So they had alerted me to this song that I had written for my father, which had been about 2 years ago, who died of lymphoma, 2 years from the time that I met these so-called psychics. And the song was languishing somewhere on a cassette tape. And when they said you should play things that are closer to the bone, that's all I could think of. The song's neither blues nor reggae. It's me on acoustic guitar. I cried at the end of the song. It was a Father's Day gift to my dad on his last Father's Day. I knew it was. And I thought, in the moment, and when I have those thoughts, I don't know if you're like that, I seize upon them. This is happening. There's no way around it. And I put that record out with the help of my bandmates. And, it wound up getting me a deal on Island Records, the last thing you'd ever think about. Maybe the Sperm song had more chance. But yeah, that's how that changed. It was in a moment and I took action on it. I never saw the psychics again. I'd like to meet them, maybe not. They gave me one of their bent forks. I can't attest to whether that was something that they'd heated up in the oven and kind of bent with their hands. The man seemed strong enough to do so, but I didn't check. I just didn't go back.
But you could have. I think most people might have said, you don't know me. What are you talking about?
No. You would have been flabbergasted. You would have been crazed. I mean, I read the book. Can I tell you one bit about how that happened?
Tell it.
When I got to this psychic's house, and how I got there is a whole other story, which is in the book.
It's
largely.
in the. I didn't want to spoil that.
Okay, no, you're not spoiling anything.
No.
So I got to the psychics, and I'm sort of like, first of all, a woman that I knew told me, it was right after my dad had died, maybe a year later, we moved to New Jersey, we were living together in a band house like the Monkees, except we got along well. And it's Ruth calling from Minnesota. Well, hey, Ruth, what's up? I just spoke to these psychics and they're worried that you want to leave the planet. I'm like, they think I'm gonna die? Yes. Would you like to see them and have a conference? Well, I'm gonna be in Minneapolis in a week. Hell, yeah, why not? What's this whole dying thing? So, one of the things that they said at the beginning, I thought it was like a way to introduce their bag of tricks. Well, why don't you just name a name of someone, a first name is all, and we'll tell you about them. So you tell me how you would have reacted to this. So that morning, that very morning, I was at my mom's house. I'd come from New Jersey. My mom, it's probably been about 2 years since my dad had died, and she was going on her first date. I think he was like a contrabass player or something from the Minnesota Orchestra. Like, who the hell is this dude that my mom is having lunch with? And my mom is a wonderful, beautiful, and she's a serious person. She's not a nut. But she was skittering around the house. Does this look good? I'm like, I've never seen my mom in this weird schoolgirl-like condition. It was very off-putting to me. It was like, this is weird. So I'm going to do something normal. I'm going to get in a car and drive to Brooklyn Center to see 2 psychics. So the psychic said, would you like to name a name? Well, I named a couple names. She was really spot on. But this one was incredible. And they were sitting face to face. It was a tag team psychic, husband and wife. I'm sitting in a chair like a dunce, and they're on either side of me. So I say, Beverly. They both giggle at the same time. They giggle. They're adults. They're like in their late 40s. The man, she's very excited about what she's going to do today. Yes.
Holy shit.
It gets a lot deeper. The woman, she's also very nervous about what's happening today. And they giggle again. And in concert with one another, they both say, she's acting like a schoolgirl. Okay, I'm listening. And you would too. I don't know. I don't know what the process is. I don't care. I'm like even sweating now from retelling this story, kind of reliving it. And that's how that happened.
Yeah, that's... yeah, I laughed a lot reading that part. That was that was great. And it's even better hearing you retell it without the book. It's just as good. All right. So for the folks in the audience, when we wrap up, we're gonna have time for a Q&A. So we got some time for you to think of some questions. We'll come around with the mic. Peter will answer, and then we'll do some book signing. But before we hear part of the story of the title of the book, Suspended by No String, the story that changed the direction of your second book, I'm going to ask you the 2 questions that I end so many of these interviews with that are completely off the topic of what we've been discussing. First, what is your favorite Jewish holiday?
Easy. Pesach, Passover. My Hebrew name is Pesach Mordechai. So as a kid, it was great. I just love the whole idea of it, even as a kid. It's a beautiful, especially now for us when our children, we have now 5 grandsons, and being together. Passover is the beginning of the Jewish nation. It's the crucible through which we traveled for 3,300 years until this present moment. For me, the saga has never stopped. This is part of it. All of it's part of it. And that you eat matzah, if everyone knows what that is, and it's flat bread, crispy. If you're from Yemen, it will be sort of soft. Nobody knows that. I'd like to eat one of those. It's like a wrap. It's not my tradition, so I probably won't. But every time I bite into it, I'd only eat it once a year. It's round. It's a special matzah. And I'm always, because taste and touch are so visceral, the tradition calls for you to take physical actions in the physical world. That's what the mitzvot are. It's not only ideological or intellectual. Those ideas are not transmittable generationally unless you have something that's tangible. We forget, especially with the internet and ChatGPT and all those things that I love, We're not brains in saline solution. We're actual physical beings. And those moments of touch and taste and sound and smell and hearing and conversation and story, they create these indelible memories. That's how we have survived in the world for multi-millennia.
And what is your favorite Jewish food?
Well, now, look, my
Not mine.
contrarian mind comes in too.
Prob-
Jewish food, by the way, is like Jewish music. It's a lot of it's, and I'm going to tell you what it is.
Please.
But understand that they're all amalgamations of our exilic experience. Whether we're Sephardic, we're living, and we're influenced by what was going on in Algeria or Morocco. My Jewish tradition is from Eastern Europe, so I would say my favorite Jewish food right off the bat, so many of them, is chicken matzo ball soup, of which we in our family make quite a good version of. I love to cook too, my wife does as well. So that would be it. I've never said that out loud. If I eat something like, Veronica's or a great kugel and I say, this is the best, don't think I'm lying. I just did what I know at the time.
Well, people ask me that question and I, give like 4 or 5 different answers because I don't know how you pick just.
Well, that's your question. That's the
understand.
nature of your question.
It is.
It's a
It makes you
probing
think.
question.
It makes you think.
It makes you think of food. I'm out of here.
I know, and now I've made us all hungry.
Yeah.
All right. So, in Suspended by No String, you write, most mornings you get up thinking, today's the day I'll win something, or make something, or meet someone, or stumble upon something so significant that it'll change everything. Peter, you want to take us out on Suspended by No String?
Yeah, let's see.
Page 90, I believe.
90?
I believe 90.
Okay, 90. I've not done an immediate edit on this, so I don't know exactly where to start, but I'm going to start towards the end, and I'll set you up. This is a story of something that sort of happened to me, and maybe we've all had these moments where, and this is where the word aliveness comes in the subheading of the book. We're all alive, of course, but it's a rarity when we actually are acutely sensing this aliveness. It's a flicker in time. It might come from the birth of a child, it might come from a wedding or a celebration, and it could come from the opposite. And in that moment, your whole, let's say, the prism through which you look at the world, the lens, becomes so wide. It almost has no limitations. This is a retelling of something that happened to me, where I came downstairs for a drink of water. Now I'm looking out the kitchen sink. There is a window, the one over the sink. You look outside. You see mostly darkness, and the darkness itself calls you, asks you to move into it, to enter it somehow. You walk outside. When you look up at the sky, you see the same stars you've seen since you were a child. But now, unlike every other time you've seen those stars, except when you first saw them as a child, they make you shiver with awe. They are a thing, you think, so wondrous that words are not strong enough for the telling. You walk further out into the grass and say out loud, as if in prayer, I've been searching all my life for something to break the monotony, to heal me of my uncertainty, of my anxiousness, of my nagging sense that there is no purpose, no design, no miracle, no thing that's mystical or truly beautiful. But now, somehow you found it, and this knowledge comes without words. It is a dance that's lodged in your muscle memory, a dance that alludes to, that hints at, that points towards these truths. The cool grass on your toes and under the soles of your feet, the sound of night birds, the swallow and the heavy great horned owl, the trilling of crickets as they call for mates in the windless late summer air, the smell of jasmine wafting from all sides, dreamy and full, The roar of jets, tiny in the vast reaches of the sky, moving in from the ocean, laden with travelers, asleep and dreaming as they rocket home to loved ones or to empty rooms. Here, under the darkened firmament, you are no more, no less than what everyone on earth has always been, a naked and fragile figure, suffused with an immutable spirit, propelling yourself here and there, communicating your innermost thoughts, inclined toward both love and war, sex and prayer, spilling blood and bringing soup to the poor, and all the while breathing, as if the very act of breathing were a supplication, a plea to touch the face of God as he peers down in silent wonder at his creation. Now, with your thirst finally slaked, you've come to appreciate what you've never allowed yourself to know, and may never have suspected was there to know. That being alive on this perfectly blue, round planet, suspended by no string and spinning in the black void of space, is enough. Thank you, Lonny.
Thank you very much,
I hope
Peter.
my mom's watching. You did a great job.
Well, thank you very
She's
much.
like, who is interviewing you? I said, he's really smart. Don't worry.
I'm just glad she wasn't here to actually meet me, so that works out well on my favor. Q&A time. Who's?
I don't even think we need a mic. They're good. Shout
Think
it
we're
out.
good? Yes, just
Oh, okay. Yeah, Matt, pass the mic.
yes.
Or Lonny.
I can repeat. Yes. Who's got it? That's right.
Phil Donahue.
Question. Anyone got a? Really, we're gonna skip straight to signing? Come on, somebody's.
All right, don't be shy. Yeah, Eric, don't
All
be
right.
shy.
Eric, go ahead.
So, Peter, the Hennepin County Library has a unique subset of your work, including some of your wonderful children's CDs
Yes.
and your last book. And even though I have a copy here, I would be excited if I saw that this book was also in the library. Do you know if that's? Do you know who puts a book in a library?
Well, I do know that it is a man or a woman in a cubicle somewhere that has a stack of books that need to go in the library, and I'm sure I'm hopeful they're working on that, because that would be it's always a thrill. The public library, great institution.
Absolutely.
Anyone else? Yes, my uncle, who's in the book.
I have a request.
Yes.
Would you read the earring story?
The which one? The earring story?
It's so great.
Yes, why not?
There we go.
My uncle, Arthur Himmelman, ladies and gentlemen. Just a little props for my uncle. When I was a kid, most days in high school, or junior high, failing out of school, my dad had to go bribe a math teacher, I think, with a television set just to give me a D-. My Uncle Sonny was there, and he said to my parents, I think you ought to get Peter a little apartment in Uptown where he can do his art. I'm not sure how that worked out, but there was no apartment, and Sonny, which we call him Sonny, wasn't in the house for at least a half a year after that. No, I don't really know. Let me see what this is. This is a very short one. It's a piece about my dad. There are a number of them in here. My father, who passed away one day after I turned 24. Paid 180. Is you on it? I love it. Let me skip to it. All right, 180. Okay, so all these things are true. Not that it matters. You can always tell a fictional story. But my dad was a heroic figure to me. My friends understood why that was so. My relatives did as well. I'm sure my mom mourns his passing every day. It's been many years. He was a United States Marine for a time, a Jewish Marine. Some think that's an oxymoron, but it's not. He was called Big Dave. I've seen him lay out a guy on a wall, smash him into a wall, which is not for no reason. He was harassing a woman. My dad didn't say, hey, do that once more, and no, he was not that kind of guy. He was strong, but also he was incredibly self-effacing. And when you were near him, if you were privileged to be near him, you felt better about your place in the world. It's just that simple. There are very few people like that. Anyone that knew him knows that I'm telling you the truth. One day, I wanted to get an earring. I thought that that might be a great accoutrement for me. My dad, I knew he was absolutely no way. It just wasn't happening. So something curious happened. This is in the teachers section of the book. Earring, 1976. Today I'm going to do something dangerous. I'll drive to the Ridgedale Mall, walk into Now and Then, and ask to have my ear pierced. First, I'll go see my dad at his office to notify him my plan. I'm sure he won't be happy. Ex-Marines hate earrings. Wow, that's great, Pete, he says. Which ear are you going to pierce? My right ear, I guess. His enthusiasm catches me by surprise. Are you going to get a hoop or a stud? Well, what's remarkable, I think, is that my dad even knows the words hoop or stud. I'll start with the stud and then get a hoop as the ear heals. A hoop is nice, my dad says. How much is this whole deal gonna cost? $20, I say. My dad peels off 3 crisp $10 bills and places them in my hand. As I pull out of the parking lot, I see him standing just out the front door. I roll down my window. My dad is smiling. Pete, one more thing. Don't come home.
But that feels very of a time.
Oh yeah, no, that's it. No, no way. I was just like, how can I get an earring? I love that he said that. It was like, yeah, rules and regulations. I get it. I did many, many, many weird things. Some I could maybe get arrested for, but I was never rebellious. I will tell you that.
So did you give him back the $30 though?
Not a chance. I bought some pot pipes with it.
There you go. All right. Excellent. Anyone else?
How important is comedy to your work?
In my work?
Yeah.
Well,
Because that's very funny, but you...
Yeah. I mean, what I've always thought, even in my stage shows, sometimes they're funny. I don't like make jokes, but things happen, and I enjoy that spur of the moment thing. And humor, just to delve into it for a second, is, if you think about it, it's not funny. What it is this beautiful collision of two unlike things. The classic is the pompous rich guy who slips on a banana peel. And why that's funny is because this guy's got everything in the world, and yet this lowly vegetable matter lays him on the floor. And that's funny. And anytime there's that collision, there is that flinty spark of humor. So when there are things that are by nature expressing sorrowful, experiences, it's very easy to once in a while drop in, not a joke, but something that creates that spark. And I don't think of it as like a technique, it's kind of native to me, but yeah, that's how I would use it. Yes. I'll do it now. I got the hang of it now.
Thank you.
So today I was listening to your song, Impermanent Things. And I always wonder, in a way it felt like maybe it's a prequel to this, and I wonder sometimes as an artist, that what you were doing, how long ago was that? Was that
That's, I could tell you exactly, it was
10 years ago, was it?
Impermanent Things?
Yeah.
No, that's I wrote it when my daughter was very young. She's 32 now, so like 32 years ago, 3 decades ago. That's what happens when you don't die. You know.
So I'm just wondering, sometimes as an artist, that you were always intending to write this, but we have to go through life and you have to peel off all the stuff that prevents you from actually getting to the core of what you want to say.
Yeah.
And sometimes I wonder if a lot of artists who don't survive and continue on or continue the discovery process like you have, they actually never get to what you got to.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there was a time when our band, Sussman Lawrence, was, you know, getting listened to by executives at Warner Brothers in New York. And there was a couple of songs. One was called, I hesitate in this era to even tell you the title, but it was called Baby Let Me Be Your Cigarette. Another one was Torture Me, All Night Long, Love Me Tough, Love Me Strong. And I was very upset, or somewhat upset. I never cried over these things, but I was upset that they didn't take those songs. Do you realize how horrible my life would be? My kids sitting in the audience, listening to their father, now a hoary old bald Jew, singing Torture Me. It's just like, what progress means isn't that you have this, you know, need to keep making it or something. It's that you make progress in life and you experience deeper levels of life. And I suppose, you know, keeping it kind of in the category of artist type, I don't consider myself like, sometimes I do art and the amalgam of it makes you an artist type, and sometimes I'm just making eggs, you know, for the sake of eating. But the more, at least the more I experience, and I've seen it with other people who have progressed, as they progress as human beings, there are changes as well. So it's something that it just comes natural to me. You're very right in saying that Impermanent Things was, you know, me getting to this. Yeah, and this is just, you know, it's not different from my songs. It's just that the songs by nature would obscure those ideas. You can't just sing the truth that it's like, oof, too much, you know. And the book has to also have veils over it. You can't just come out and say things. There has to be, and I don't use this word in a negative sense, there has to be a seduction, an invitation for somebody to be able to feel and to trust that this person who's writing this, whomever it is, that you can trust them. And then your mind relaxes, and if there's something there, you go for it. It might change the way you think.
So one thing I didn't ask about, because I was focused very much on the book, but you have new music out.
Oh, forgot about that.
We should let you plug your new singles, though.
Yeah,
please.
yeah. Well, the
They're
book.
very good.
Yeah, I mean, this is a special album. It's coming out. It's most of the Sussman Lawrence people on it. Not all the best people, but some of the ones that were nearby. And we hadn't recorded together in 30 years. And when I was going to make this new record, I did just a bunch of songs. You know, I keep writing and writing. They go into the storehouse. I need to get a bigger box each day. But I decided, let me use these guys. Can everyone play? And damn straight, they're better than ever because they've progressed in their life and they understand what's needed to bring out, you know, some of the beautiful parts of the song. And the record is called At the Emergence of Stars, and it will be released 1 second after midnight on October 10th. That's how they do it, you know. And being released means nobody's waiting at the record store anymore, you know.
you know, it'll be on all the streaming services, which is not as wonderful or graceful as being able to hold a tangible item. The other thing I want to say is, one of the things that is less, I don't know what, fulfilling about making records these days is the knowledge, the certainty that no one will be listening to it in the way that it was intended to be listened to, which is as a whole, to invite friends, to sit and do nothing but listen to the record. That's how it used to be, not to be nostalgic. I know that people will pick a song here or there, then they'll move on, they'll be fed by their analytics, other songs in the style. But when you hold something, and it refers back to Passover, there's tangibility here. And you can grasp it, not only physically, but, you know, emotionally. But damn well straight, start streaming that music now.
Well, excellent. All right. Okay.
I don't have a question, I have a statement.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. It's my pleasure. Whenever you're in the room, you inspire me in ways that you don't know. Your energy is like beaming. I needed like some special, you know, bauxite protection from this thing. Like, I don't know if bauxite is what you would use. We'll have to think about that. But I've opened myself up. There's no bauxite at all. Bring it to me.
All right. Last call. Oh. Here we go. All right.
I didn't know until tonight that you did all the drawings, and I found myself after reading sections, you know, trying to see if it linked to what you. So I don't know if you could just talk about
Sure.
how you came up with the drawings. Was it after you wrote and thought about it, or did they come really quick? Or
Yeah, I mean, it was afterwards, and you know, I always like to draw, and I did one drawing for this, and it was like with a little thin Sharpie, and I sort of juxtaposed it with one of the stories that was sad, and it somehow made the sadder things a little lighter, just a touch, and the things that were a little lighter, they somehow deepened. And I think, I don't know if any of you have read like James Thurber. I used to read it when I was a kid or see it. And he always had these little drawings. And they added so much to it. It was sort of like a pleasure. It was another color and another texture. And Barbara Clark, whom I've discussed, she said, well, I love this drawing, but you need to write one for every piece. Okay, that was burdensome, but I'm glad I took her advice.
Well, that's what you get for being ambitious that way.
Yeah, well.
All right.
One more thing.
Please.
You know, I wrote these pieces, as I mentioned, for myself, but I always have a couple people in mind, even with my songs. One of them is my wife, and I'll never show her something until it's like finished. I don't know why that is. I'm just, if she says it's not good, I'm like, well, I'm out. That's just how I am. One of my kids, who's still interested in the things I do of this nature, my uncle Sonny, and Jeff Victor. Jeff Victor was so helpful to me in this book. He was reading these things and was going through a very hard time, some physical challenges. And I remember I would write him things to show him my empathy. And I'd send them to him, and Jeff Victor. Eric Moen, ladies and gentlemen, on saxophone.
All right. Well, folks, thank you very much for being here. This is great. Thank you, Peter Himmelman. This has been fabulous.
Thank you, Lonnie.
Thank you. This is great. The Who the Folk podcast is a part of the Jewfolk Podcast Network and a product of Jewfolk Inc. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. If you have suggestions for other podcast guests, please email them to me at editor@tcjewfolk.com. For our other shows, check out tcjewfolk.com/podcast.